Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to dig into Janalee Beck's book, How to Have Multiple Orgasms.
Yeah, it's quite a title.
It is. We've got some excerpts, her own stories and advice, and our mission really is to pull out the key insights.
Figure out what she means by multiple orgasms and, enhancing pleasure.
Exactly. What does it all mean?
And it's interesting, she mentions right off the bat how varied the reactions were.
Oh, yeah.
People were either super curious, like, tell me more,
Hmm.
or kind of skeptical, even offended, she says.
Wow. Offended.
Yeah. It really shows how female sexuality can still be such a charged topic. Lots of misconceptions.
That story about the poker player.
Oh, right. Who didn't even believe multiple orgasms were real.
Exactly. Tells you a lot about the landscape she was writing into.
For sure. And she's clear about her own background, isn't she?
Yeah, she says, look, I'm not a clinical psychologist.
Not a sex therapist in the traditional sense.
Right. She's sharing what she learned, her own journey,
Trying to bust some myths.
and help women reach what she calls female fireworks.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's the term. She seems pretty convinced that sex doesn't get any better than this,
A bold claim.
and that we should all be thinking more about our love lives.
And challenging those old stereotypes about women and sex.
Definitely a mission there.
So what's the core idea? Her philosophy.
Well, it seems to boil down to taking responsibility.
For yourself.
Yeah. She argues a woman has to be sort of chiefly responsible for her own orgasm,
Okay.
and that spirited sex is mostly mental, like 90% mental, she claims.
90%. That's huge.
It is. And being really tuned into your own body.
Physical self. Yeah.
She calls this whole approach sex equity lovemaking.
Sex equity. Interesting phrase. What does that imply?
It sounds like self-reliance in getting satisfied, but also communicating what you need to your partner.
So it's not just solo. It's about partnership, too.
Right. Owning your pleasure, but also sharing the responsibility for connection, not being passive.
Gotcha. Okay, so the big question then.
Is it actually possible? Multiple orgasms?
Yeah. What'd she say?
A resounding yes,
Well,
apparently.
like how many?
She throws out numbers like 2, 3, 5,
Yeah.
even more, potentially.
Wow. In one session.
In a single lovemaking session, yeah. But then she immediately adds a caution.
Which is?
Don't get hung up on the numbers. It's not about counting.
Ah. Okay. So it's not like keeping score.
Exactly. She suggests thinking of the whole thing as maybe one long orgasm.
One long. How does that work?
More about the overall extended pleasure approached with a fresh mind and a compassionate heart, she says.
No numbers, no time limits, just the experience itself.
That seems to be the idea. Focus on the feeling, not the tally.
Okay. Let's get back to that mental aspect you mentioned, the 90% thing.
Yeah, that's a major theme. Sexiness is mostly in the mind.
Less about just physical appearance.
Much less, according to her. She uses stories to show how feeling loved can actually make you feel more sensual.
Like a feedback loop.
Exactly. A positive cycle. Feeling loved makes you feel more lovable, which maybe makes you act more sensual, and so on.
That makes intuitive sense. Does she try to define sexy?
She does, actually, give 6 characteristics.
Oh, yeah. What are they?
Okay, let's see. Self-confidence or balance. Being affectionate and tender.
Uh-huh.
Being successful or productive, which is interesting, not just looks.
Right. Competence can be attractive.
And humor, wit, being fun, energy and health.
Okay.
And finally, being attentive and responsive, really connecting with the other person.
So it's quite well-rounded, much more than just physical attributes.
Very much so. It's about the whole person.
And she even includes a quiz.
Yeah, a little self-assessment thing to see where you are on the sensuality scale, I guess.
Like becoming sensual, fair prognosis.
Good chance, and bravo. And each level has some tips.
To become more attuned to pleasure.
Exactly. And she ties this strongly to self-esteem. Basically, feeling good about yourself, confident in who you are, translates directly to a better experience in the bedroom.
Confidence is key.
That seems to be a core message.
Okay, let's dive into orgasms themselves. What does she say about the different types and myths?
Right. She covers the usual categories, single, multiple, sequential, but then also mentions others, like perineum and anal orgasms.
Okay, broadening the scope.
Yeah. And when she talks about multiple orgasms, she describes them as potentially like 6 to 12 climaxes close together.
6 to 12.
Wow. But interestingly, she says each individual one might feel less intense than a single big one.
Less intense. So what's the appeal then?
The overall experience, Calming these less intense peaks leads to something exceptionally fulfilling as a whole.
Ah, I see. The sum is greater than its parts, maybe.
Something like that. And she makes an analogy about anatomy,
Between.
the clitoris and the tip of the penis,
Yeah.
how they develop from similar tissue.
Okay.
And she uses this to suggest women might have an advantage in terms of frequency.
An advantage. How?
The potential for, as she puts it, scores of orgasms in a 24-hour period because of how stimulation can progress.
Mm.
That's quite a claim. She doesn't go deep into the biology, though.
Not really. It's more observational, based on her framework. But, both structures are packed with nerve endings. Highly sensitive.
Right. And what about reactions, how people respond during or after?
Oh, she's very clear on that. Anything goes, basically.
Like crying, talking?
Whining, crying, talking, being totally quiet. She lists a bunch, says it's all normal.
So no judgment.
None. The focus should just be on what feels right and authentic for you in that moment.
That seems healthy. And she mentions Kegels,
Those exercises for the PC muscle.
the pubococcygeal muscle.
Right, the ones you use to, stop urine mid-flow, or the elevator exercise idea.
And she sees benefits there.
Definitely. Says they're great for getting more control over vaginal muscles,
Which leads to...
heightened sensation in the genitals, and ultimately makes orgasms more likely or possibly more intense. Because of muscle tone and maybe blood flow?
That's the implication. Stronger muscles, more awareness, better response.
Okay, makes sense. Now, what about those big myths she tackles?
Yeah, she goes after a few common ones. First up, the simultaneous orgasm.
Ah, the holy grail for some couples.
Right, but she argues against chasing it too hard.
Why's that?
Says it often just creates pressure, takes away from enjoying your own experience.
Because you're too focused on syncing up.
Exactly, and she even suggests separate orgasms have their own plus points.
Like what?
Like, you can fully focus on your own climax and then fully appreciate your partner's. Really be present for each other's experience, just separately.
Interesting perspective. Takes the pressure off.
Totally. Then there's the myth about self-pleasure, masturbation.
Still a bit taboo for some.
Very much so. She argues strongly that it's normal, it's healthy.
What are the benefits she highlights?
Well, understanding your own body, for one.
Hmm.
Figuring out what feels good.
Learning your own responses.
Precisely. Also, managing stress, releasing tension, all good things.
And she mentions vibrators.
Yep. As tools that can enhance self-pleasure, help women learn their desires.
Which can then lead to better partnered sex.
That's the connection she makes. If you know what you like, you can communicate it better.
Makes perfect sense. What other myths does she cover?
Motherhood and sex. The idea that they don't mix well.
Oh yeah, that's a common assumption. Exhaustion, body changes.
She acknowledges all that, says it's real,
Yeah.
but argues you can still maintain intimacy.
How?
Through support, communication, finding new ways. She shares stories from mothers whose sex lives actually improved or evolved positively after kids.
That's encouraging. Counterintuitive maybe, but encouraging.
Yeah. And the last big one is aging.
That sex declines inevitably as you get older.
Exactly. She challenges that. Admits physical changes happen, of course,
But
but argues that mature women can actually become more responsive sexually.
really?
Maybe less inhibition, more self-knowledge. Plus, the emotional connection, the history with a partner becomes even more important, more satisfying.
So experience and emotional depth can compensate for or even outweigh physical changes.
That seems to be her argument. It shifts the focus.
Okay, so lots of myth busting. Now, the practical side. Getting your partner to meet your needs, how does she suggest approaching that?
Communication, communication, communication.
No surprise there.
Not at all. It's central. She even gives specific do's and don'ts for bedroom talk.
Okay, let's hear the do's first.
Be specific, open. Say what you like, what feels good. Don't be vague. Be generous with praise, positive feedback. Tell them when they're doing something right.
Positive reinforcement?
Exactly. Be honest about your desires, your boundaries.
Okay.
And be positive. Keep the overall tone encouraging, not critical.
And the don'ts.
Don't talk about general relationship problems in bed. Save that for another time and place.
Keep the bedroom for intimacy, not arguments.
Pretty much. And don't be distasteful. Avoid negative or critical language about sex itself or your partner's efforts.
Keep it respectful and focused on pleasure.
That's the vibe. Positive, encouraging, specific, honest.
Got it. Does she offer other tips for enhancing intimacy beyond just talking during?
Yeah, she does. She talks about Verbal cues during sex moaning, saying yes or don't stop, ways to reinforce what's working.
Guiding your partner in the moment.
Right. And also special ways outside the bedroom.
Like ladling.
Things. Writing a note, planning a surprise date night, things that build connection generally.
Nurturing the whole relationship.
Seems like it. She also mentions the virtue of seduction.
Ooh, sounds intriguing. What's that about?
Basically, that initiating sex doesn't always have to be super direct or blunt.
Subtle is good.
Subtle, playful, creating an atmosphere of desire, building anticipation,
Okay.
and being sweet yet firm about your needs. Clear but not demanding.
Finding that balance.
Yeah, and she suggests something interesting, agreed upon hugging and holding time.
Does cuddling scheduled?
Yeah, like non-sexual physical touch time to maintain closeness
That's actually a nice idea. Prioritizing connection.
and creating a nice bedroom environment. Verbally expressing positive feelings, it's all part of the package.
She also touches on sensory stuff. Visual, auditory.
Kinesthetic, yeah. VAK modalities. It's brief, but the idea is to understand how your partner primarily experiences the world.
So if they're visual, maybe lingerie or lighting matters more.
Or if they're auditory, words of affirmation or sounds might be more impactful. Kinesthetic, obviously, touch.
And mirroring body language.
Yeah, subtly matching them to build rapport. It's a concept from NLP, basically applied to intimacy.
Interesting. And finally, she has 7 steps to success.
A quick list, yeah. Let's see. Compatible chemistry, gotta have that spark.
Foundational.
Psychological comfort level, feeling safe, trusting,
Crucial.
plentiful, and fabulous foreplay. She really emphasizes this.
Not rushing things.
Definitely not.
Uh-huh.
Then, life-giving breaths. Deep, conscious breathing during sex.
For relaxation and sensation.
That seems to be the idea. Reducing stress, feeling more, and making noises.
Being vocal.
Yeah, she sees it as natural and helpful. Expressing pleasure, guiding your partner.
Okay, what else is in the 7 steps?
Kissing. She highlights its importance. Different kinds of kisses.
Often overlooked, maybe.
Could be. And touch and general massage, stroking. Also getting creative with foreplay.
Like how?
She mentions maybe incorporating food, playful activities, keeping it interesting.
So it's a whole toolkit.
Seems like it. Chemistry, comfort, foreplay, breathing, sounds, kissing, touch, creativity.
All right, so wrapping this up. Looking back at Beck's book, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, it really seems like achieving multiple orgasms, or just a more fulfilling sex life generally, isn't about one magic trick.
No silver bullet.
Right. It's multifaceted. It involves knowing yourself, like really deep self-awareness, being able and willing to communicate openly and honestly. That came up again and again.
Definitely. Communication is huge.
And having a positive mindset,
Yeah.
being willing to explore, to challenge those myths we talked about.
Getting rid of limiting beliefs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that idea of personal responsibility keeps coming back to.
Owning your pleasure.
Yeah. Recognizing the power of your mind in all this and just, understanding and asking for what you need.
It's a very proactive approach.
Very. It puts the individual, particularly the woman in her context, in the driver's seat of her own sexual experience.
So final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Well, given how much emphasis she puts on the mental side of things and on questioning those common myths,
Right.
it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might shifting your own mindset, challenging maybe one assumption you hold about sex or pleasure, how might that open up new possibilities?
Like what could change if you just thought about it differently?
Exactly. Or even what's one small, concrete thing you could do, maybe starting today, to explore your sensuality a bit more?
Either by yourself or with a partner.
Yeah. Just one small step prompted by these ideas. It's definitely food for thought.